Hey guys. I might switch this one. This is kind of coming out. Hello. Hi. And then I'll give this to you at the end. Thanks so much for coming. This is really awesome and really exciting. I so appreciate that Elastic Arts reached out to me and that the CLEAT team reached out to me to do this. It means the world. And yeah, I'm just gonna echo, I wrote this down because it's really important, but I'm just gonna echo what Stefan said, which is that if there was one takeaway from this class, it's that Elastic Arts is for you. So if you want to put something on here, if you have an idea, they will encourage you. If you want to bring it to fruition, they will support you in that, and they will also support you and follow you wherever you go after your idea. So it's not just a one and done thing. You are then now inducted into the family. You have many aunts and uncles and brothers and cousins in the Elastic Arts family who are going to help you out. And yes, the way that, well, I'm gonna have to start from the beginning, the very beginning. And the very beginning is in a place of ignorance, as it often is. I decided to make a piece about 3 years ago that, like any of you who has ever created anything, you feel something welling up inside of you and you feel on the brink of something, but you may not know what it will be. And so for me, I had some musical ideas. I'm a musician, I'm a theater artist. So I started with a bunch of musical ideas and just decided to run full force at it. I decided also to include this quote because, yeah, I was coming from a place of being an amateur when it came to recording, when it came to mixing, when it came to playing, like improvising in some spaces and in some ways. And I had so much love for art, but I'm still learning. And that gives you a lot of freedom, and it gave me a lot of freedom. This is a quote from Maya Deren, who is an experimental filmmaker, and I love her work a lot. And yeah, so once again, if you have any ideas at all, this is a peer-to-peer conversation. I have no expertise that is greater than your own experiences. I am not a master in this. When I started talking about this work, hello, welcome, come on in. When I started talking and thinking about this work, I realized that I was coming at it from a solo perspective. So if you are a theater artist and you have ideas about doing ensemble work with the CLEAT system, please let's talk about it either during our conversations here or maybe after, or via email. We had our emails up there. They're gone now, so I guess you got to talk to us. But yeah, so anyways, this is a conversation. This is not like a lecture or anything like that. I'm just walking through the process of something. So yeah, I decided to move forward with this swelling emotion of wanting to make art, and I decided and realized that the thing I wanted most as someone who had started working with audio collage and found sound and experimental noise, my wanting to do that was always to bring people into a world almost physically, because I could set the sounds and put them exactly where I want them. I could set basically like a stage. It's almost like setting props or setting up a painting and building a place around people. And so I set up you can see my Rogers Park quarantine apartment here, beautifully laid out. I decided to set it up a la ASMR and record the living, breathing space of my apartment, because it has a lot of like creaks and and work that's been done over years and hundreds of years, as a lot of old Chicago apartments do, and it felt like a living head. So I have the left ear over here in our dining room, and my right ear over here, and then the nose were here, and the back of the head was where my best friend Stoss was sleeping. And over a period of 3 weeks, I recorded 27 hours of audio, some of it improvised, some of it pre-written. I recorded the found sound of the things happening in the alley and the streets outside and the neighbors walking upstairs and me running up and down the stairs and my friends talking and crying in the back. And then also text that came from myself or from people that I really, really respected, that I brought in. So all this audio, and then I shaved it all up and like cut it all up and started to quilt it back together. And what it started to look like was this. I'm gonna go. Boop. It started to look like this. This was one section of 4. As I pared this audio down into like an hour and a half of audio, 27 hours of recording down to like an hour and a half of audio, I started to put them into these little buckets of emotional qualities or textural qualities or different things that I thought brought them together in through lines, and started to piece. I don't know if anybody has made a quilt before. That is really sick if you have. It's really hard to do. But yeah, you're creating these little patterns that can work together, and they're in tiny little sections. So the way it was recorded, once again, it had the left and the right ear so that they could sonically reference each other in terms of the depth of sound. So if something is happening like way over there, the left ear is going to be catching it better, and the right ear is just going to get like this tiny trickle of sound from what's happening over there. But that brings you in, and I started to pan it and to mess with it and chop it, screw it in all sorts of ways. And then this is just an example of what some of the panning looked like. So some of that panning was atmospheric, but then it also started to take on a movement and a life of its own. This is a part that we're going to hear later, but there's the sound of a violin that travels all across the soundscape that's happening in your headphones, and then eventually happens on the cleat system. But yeah, so and then it all coalesced into this one piece that I started to realize, like anything you make of art, and I believe that theater is the oldest art, and that every art is theater, because everything has a narrative. It has a beginning, a middle, and end. So it all, no matter what it is, even if it is a single tone, even a single drone, that itself has a narrative arc of stillness, of contentedness. So I started to realize and notice the narrative that was happening in my piece. It starts off with struggle to climax, and a greater struggle to a release, to an ecstasy of acceptance, and then you come back into the heroic journey. And I realized I wanted to not only hear it, but I wanted to perform this and follow the path that I had created for myself and walk through the hero's journey, or, you know, yeah, the hero, I guess, of the piece, or just the guy, I really, truly, of the piece, walking through it and experiencing it in full and adding movement and trying to express the sonic attitudes that I had created through a physical way and amplify that in a way and use my body as a sort of like speaker of movement. And I realized I started working, and so all this is like a lot, right? And this is one of 4 different things, and this is 30 minutes, so you know, it's like all these different things, and each of the audio clips has its own crazy pan and all these other things. And then I was gonna take it and chop it up even smaller so I could place it into the cleat system, so all these different things would also be expounded by 16. And I was working on that and crying, and Ben Billington was like, Dani, you should just put this into Max and make this live, and you should probably work with someone else. And the best thing for writer's block or creative stasis is to get a friend and to collaborate. So I picked up the phone and I went ring, 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 and I said, hello, hi Dante.
Hi Dee.
Can you please help me? I want to turn my experimental audio collage piece into a narrative performance piece on the Cleat audio system.
I would love nothing more than to help you turn your experimental sound collage piece into a narrative piece on the Cleat system.
You are so beautiful, I love you, and so that's what I did.
I love you too. Hi, and on that note, my name is Dante. I am a friend of Dee's, and I have been using electronic circuitry to create sounds for a couple years now. And when Dee approached me about helping them put on a theatrical performance of Have sometime in mid-March, and in between then and mid-June, I spent 3 months coding my own mixing interface in Max MSP. So there are a couple of things that are going on here. These seven interfaces make up the bulwark of the performance, and what you can think of is that each of these XY planes are representative of this space as a whole. That wherever this point is more or less where the sound is coming out. This corner right here is representative. Okay, is representative of a whole. This corner right here is representative of that speaker. This corner right here is representative of that speaker, and you can infer everything in between. So there's also a slope slider, which represents how far out of a radius the sound goes from there. For instance, let me just show you, prime the tracks and go to here. You get the idea. So think of it a little bit as if it is a cone that is sliding around the space. This is where the vertex is, and the slope represents how large the base of the cone is. And drop down right from each and every single one of the speakers. How high up off the ground that point of the cone is how loud the audio is. If that makes any sense. That's the way that I tried to spatialize it. So, another thing that's going on here is that as we saw over here, there are a couple of audio tracks of which are more or less the same thing, but ping in and out of the panning a bunch. There are a couple points throughout Have that had that, and I wanted to. A lot of what my process was when Dee approached me was figuring out ways to take effects that are normally just relegated to panning and how to expand those across a two-dimensional space and to sort of like mirror the artistic choices that were made in the panning and why. Stereo was something that has only come about because of recorded audio, and therefore is like in the grand scheme of music a relatively like newer concept. And therefore there's this like great expansion of ways that you could configure the end product as a result. Like if you've ever listened to the Mamas and the Papas, for instance, how they always have like one singer in on the right and one singer on the left. So what I viewed is that taking each of these tracks from stereo into multi-channel, like into multi-channel audio, it is adding an extra dimension. So what I settled on for a lot of the parts of Have that were like this was creating these spinning units. As you can see, I try and click it, nothing happens because these are automated. Each of these points is its own individual audio track, but it functions in largely the same way as each of these. And then in addition, there is also, it's actually just easier for me to show you. Let's do like over here. Yeah. There's also the rotational frequency, which I can use to either stop it, or I can use to make it speed up really fast. And then there's also the distance from the center aspect. So right now, these audio channels are rotating around the outer 12 speakers, distance from center. It's going around the inner 4 really quickly now. So that was an additional consideration to make when composing Have. All these things together, they are able to put together parts that sound like this, or this. Oh wait, I went too far. Or even this. And one of the techniques that I employed is that say at this point right here, this is the sound of an ABBA CD skipping, and eventually this crescendos to be very loud. So one of the things that I use to try and get you off balance and off kilter is to increase the rotational frequency very, very rapidly. Now where your attention is being drawn is repeatedly changing as the sounds whiz past you, and it creates this sense of you being pulled in like every single direction, which was part of me translating the artistic intent behind the original into the performance. So that's that. And then on the contrary side of that, there's the voices and the special cases. Now the special cases is something that I employ, where it is one discrete audio file of which is at equal volume at each of the speakers. Let me show you what I'm talking about and see how you respond when you hear it kick in. I went back a little bit too far.
If every second of our lives recurs an infinite number of times, we are nailed to eternity, as Jesus Christ was nailed to the cross. It is a terrifying prospect. In the world of eternal return, the weight of unbearable responsibility lies heavy on every move we make.
You get the idea. And in doing that, it creates this oppressive force that with everything else spatialized, it depends where you're at. It depends where you're at, but like having everything on one, like playing unilaterally across a space, it demands your attention. It catches you off guard, and it is almost like the word of God being beamed down upon you. Finally, the last portion of Have that I wanted to talk about is actually present right. Let me zoom in. It's oh right, I don't have my that. Is this portion right here, where it is something like, let's call it like it was like 17, right? It was like 17 different like voices like at this portion, and in stereo, given that it's only like 2 outputs, all of these get smushed together, and it is up to you to like try and like listen in closely to try and parse each and every one of them. However, and this is the voices portion, I was able to configure it such that every single one of the voices is playing out of a different speaker, as you can. And I can like tell you about it, but like let me just show you.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Trying to go to sleep, but I can see
I'm sorry, that's like my favorite part of this. So yeah, and then in that cacophony, you are able to pick out each and every single one of those voices, and that is fundamentally something that I think is transformative about spatial audio, is that it allows you to focus your attention on the different and discrete aspects of the audio and experience like the mix in a way that like you wouldn't be able to otherwise, because every single like disparate part of the sound is being condensed into like a couple of speakers. And that I think is transformative, and that I think is ripe ground for greater experimentation with the emotions that you are able to elicit from using such a system.
Oh no, it's coming back. What's happening? No more technology. Now it's time for the technology of the human body. All right. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so this is just some ideas that I had. These are just some ideas. Also, if you have any questions, if you want to like talk about anything or like bring anything up, just raise your hand, and or like any comments if this is eliciting any, like any thoughts or like, oh, that reminds me of this. Like, please feel free to like raise your hand and jump in. Okay, cool. So this is this for me when I first went into the elastic art space and was starting to use it. As a place for not just sound art, but for my physical body in theater, I started to realize the immensity of this place, because it's essentially, like, when you think of theater, there are often some things that come up which are like, range anywhere from like Shakespeare in the Park or Tennessee Williams on a proscenium off-Broadway stage that you go to see with your family, or sometimes you might think of incredibly experimental downtown theater where someone comes in and sits on a chair for 5 hours and then leaves. And something like a space like this is just a complete open-ended idea for what you can do with your body. And I started to realize that that brings a lot of power, and it also brings a couple of things that you can control. And so these first three have to do with your body. It's the proximity of your body in space. So I think about it in terms of, imagine, and maybe this is very real for some people, maybe it's not as real for some people, but imagine you're taking the train home and you're by yourself and someone gets on the train. They can go all the way to the end of the train, which can leave a certain kind of tension or make you feel really comfortable. Okay, they're giving me my space, I've been giving them their space, whatever. Or they can come and, you know, sit right next to you and you're the only two people on a train. So I'm thinking of proximity that makes you feel a very different way. And imagine now you're in a crowded train and someone sits next to you. Well, that's normal, it makes sense. They have nowhere else to sit except the only empty seat. So that's one thing. In this space, if your body is in a certain place as either an actor or in relationship with other audience members, which is also cool if you're not in a proscenium style, you can see other audience members, that elicits an emotional reaction. Next is the body in a location over time. So I think of, imagine I'm in this space and I'm moving my body and I'm so energetic. And I'm doing lots of energy over here, lots of energy over here. And now my body is doing an action or a movement in this location, and I'm spending time here. Much like a ghost in a haunted house, or the loss of somebody, maybe a sibling goes off to college and you're used to them sitting at the dinner table or being at the, being on the couch in a certain way. When that action and that body moves and leaves the space, completely my fault. Okay, so action in this space. When someone leaves and now moves over here and creates stillness, there now is a relationship with the ghost of the action, and because time is an infinite loop and has no beginning or middle end, that action is still happening over there and we've still experienced it, still felt it. The stillness then brings a duality. It may, for audience members, it may create a level of anxiety because, oh, there's a lot of action going on and now there's nothing happening. Or it may create a release and a relaxation. Oh, stillness in the absence of action. And then when I start to create a pattern between that, action, 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 stillness, 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 I start to divide the space into a space where on this side is where all the action is, and this side is where all the stillness is. Doesn't mean that you feel intensity in either way. It starts to become personal for the audience member depending on how they relate to what the body is doing in them. And then, yes, action and movement. What kind of actions you're doing, what kind of movements you're doing. Then you have your sound. So the location of your sound, the texture of your sound, the volume of the sound. So now, here I am doing my action movements on this side, because that's what I've created. And I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. And right here in speaker number 2 is the most dangerous, terrifying, oppressive sound you've ever heard in your life. Now comes narrative. I'm running away from something, right? Or if it's speaker number 16 over there, you hear the most beautiful, haunting music, and I'm turning this way, and I'm running. Now I'm running towards something, and there's less of a tension and less of a fear. Was that a question over there? I saw a hand.
There's a possible, I understand, I don't know in this, there's a possible Spanish. There's a locato and the action. There's an inversion and the locato and the action.
Oh, okay. Are you talking about the...
And the conversion, and there's for conversion, communication, there's location and the action. There's
Like,
inversion.
There's an inversion?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. Like,
there's possible the position and the locato and the action.
exactly, yeah, you can invert the question. I believe just something you were noticing was that, like, the body and the action in position, you can invert it. So if there was a lot of energy over here, and then you bring it over here, it changes and switches things around. Which, exactly, yeah, you can make people expect a certain thing and then switch it and change their minds. Yeah, exactly. And that's the fun, and that's where, like, the artist comes in, yeah. That was a wonderful comment. So yeah, the location and the sound. And so the location is really important, especially if you're trying to, like, change and kind of manipulate and move your audience into doing certain things or letting them experience certain things. And then the texture of the sound, is the texture intense or gritty, all these different things that you bring in as an artist, but these textures can really affect people's bodies and people's minds. Like really high-pitched tones or really these really shiny, like sheer tones can make people feel uncomfortable, almost like a dog whistle. And cause them to maybe even move away from a speaker and take up a new position and have a new relationship of the sound that's happening. And then the volume of sound, is it loud, is it quiet, what sort of emotions does that elicit? So, yeah, Dante was talking about with those little, like, what are they called? The pick sliders. The pick sliders, exactly. With the little pick sliders, those little squares where you can move the sound. This is kind of, so right now, this is where we are, is the projection wall. We've got 1 through 4 over here, and then back, I will move this. And also, if you want this, I can totally share it with anybody. But this is kind of the spatial setup from a bird's eye view. And when I was looking at this grid that was so kindly given to me by the CLEAT team, I started instantaneously to divide it into different sections and with different ideas. So in the same way that action and movement and sound and space and distance to the audience is important, as an actor or as a theater maker, when you start to divide your space and create spaces for you to walk into and kind of set up your own world, you can start to work with, or what I was doing was working with these really archetypal ideals. So one, duality, the energy or the stillness, lightness, darkness, heaviness, lightness again, evil, good, you know, duality. You can really split these spaces up, or you could split it into these quadrants, into fourths. You can think of the 4 seasons or the 4 elements, or having phases or changes. You can work with very archetypal or arcane ideas of, like, the pentagram or the triangle, and start to map your space and create a world in which, as you move along these paths and as you travel these paths, you already have connotation and idea for what that means to you as an artist and what you're trying to express through your piece. And then I had this, like, I also have, like, north, south, east, and west. So it's kind of hard to think about which way we're actually facing right now. but this is actually facing east, and diversity is going this way. Maybe you have your ideas of north, your North Star. Maybe your character is always moving toward that. Maybe you feel that spiritually or artistically to work with the cardinal directions. That was something that I set up in my performance for sure. You have this arrow going across. So if you want to create energy, you're always making a motion to go this way, and then come back and redo the motion over and over and over again. You start to create waves of energy that your audience can feel with you. So once again, this is all from my perspective, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you guys about your ideas with this. I just wanted to share a couple of my inspirations for this too. You steal everything as an artist. Steal everything and do it well and do it deeply and pay homage to the people that you're stealing from. We are never pure as artists. We are never uninfluenced. There is no tabula rasa. Even Enya, who lives in her castle with her 17 cats and doesn't listen to the music of other people, is influenced very deeply. She has to go to the Irish version of Kroger at some point, so and hear the music there. And I love her. But definitely an inspiration. But yeah, so some of the people I was thinking of just really quickly, and also to kind of express what my piece looked like for those who weren't there. This is Vissolod's Meyerhold's biomechanics. It's the idea of working against, there was like a very constructivist, concrete way of acting back. I don't want to give the wrong time period, so I think it was probably it was like early 1900s, where this is a technique of working away from the I don't know, kind of like the anesthetizing thinking brain acting that comes, the very like esoteric heady acting that comes, and moving it directly into your body, and the assumption that the audience will react to the motions and the archetypal movements of the body in certain ways, and that they create certain connotations, instantaneously without having to communicate via the spoken word. And especially working with the audio that I was working with, I didn't really feel like I needed to speak for myself. I wanted my body to carry a lot. So yeah, I was working a lot with these ideas of very like kinetic motion and movement. This is Martha Graham, who was she was a choreographer, a contemporary choreographer in around like the 1930s and 40s. Beautiful work, and also work with texture and fabric. So that was something I was working a lot with, was the tension and the texture of fabric, and how to use that to create a scene of intensity or tension or fear or struggle within an artist. All these very dynamic shapes. And then, of course, Mother, Solange. She has worked with a lot of choreographers, and she herself is a choreographer and modern dancer, and uses space and shape over time to create repetition and movement, to create certain connotations or emotions. So yeah, that was kind of my thoughts, my artistic thoughts when coming in to make this piece, and using the sound that I was creating to channel the narrative that I had created with the piece, and then through my body, and then back out into the audience.
And speaking of which, I want to play one small section from the performance of Have. This is towards the this is about halfway through the third act. So that was towards the third act of Have, and this may not translate as neatly because there is not the human component. This was like when it was like about as straight up as of a dance piece as possible. But what our intention was during this portion was to animate the lead violin part as if it were another performer, and that is something that is always nice about working with Dee, I have to say, is that when I first started, I viewed my own role as being sort of like a static tech support version, but one of the things that they invited me to do and they invited me to approach this as is also like as a performer, but I am doing the mixing portion and the movement and the animus of the music that is my own performance. And it allowed me to, in this specific portion, which I will say, I know I already said this, but like this is also another one of my favorite parts of Have, is that originally it is about as straight up of like a dance number as we really ever got during this. And what initially happens is that I am following Dee around the space, literally as if this is like a halo above their head, and then I think that.
It's so tempting and clickable.
It is. And then I turn it off, and then at some point there's a break, and then the lead violin part starts like moving away from Dee, and they start chasing it, and then it starts chasing Dee as Dee goes and like hides around the space, and then eventually the two reconcile, and the lead violin part is dancing in complement with Dee instead of just mirroring Dee or running to or from Dee, and that sort of like creates like the animus of the performance aspect of the mixing. There are also other portions where this is an ambient drone that moves around the room, and there's also one portion towards the end where it is a sweeping sound that I am then moving like to and from.
Like literally the sound of someone.
Yeah, literally the sound of somebody like sweeping. But like what I am doing is I am literally like moving it like this, as if like I am sweeping the entire as if I am sweeping the stage that this is all taking part on, like with audio, and that was honestly just like one of like the more like fun parts of doing all this, is getting to anthropomorphize the sound, and I don't know, there's just like not really anything that's quite like that. And then that's it. Yes? Wait, actually.
Oh yeah. So as for those
turn it off again.
For those who came kind of later, this is being recorded, so if you want to come back to any of this information, or if you want to send it to anybody who you think might use it, yes, it's being recorded. So when we are having a conversation, and obviously if this devolves into like a big kiki and we like are just really getting into it and talking, we don't have to worry about the microphones, but we're going to record your questions, or at least repeat your questions, so people back home can hear it, which makes me feel very important.
Yeah, very important. Also, actually, one more thing that I wanted to say before we do Q&A. This is all available on the CLEAT website at cleat.info. I have it uploaded onto my GitHub. If you want, you can download it and use it yourself. And if you ever have any questions about it, can you message people over GitHub? I always forget.
I'm gonna put our emails back up.
Yeah, feel free to email me with any questions.
Also, feel free to send emails to cleat@elasticarts.org, and we will connect. We will serve as the connector.
Hit slide. Oh.
I'm putting it down.
If you guys want to share a mic, I'm happy to run mic.
Yay!
Oh, it is open?
Yeah. So are we there? Is it CLEAT? Yeah, Elastic Arts, CLEAT, CLEAT @elasticarts.org.
Nice, I did it right.
And are we there? Is it? Yeah, there it is. Wow. You just edited a slide in real time. The level of liveness here. It's great. Is it Q&A time?
Sure.
That was
Q&A
first of
time.
all, that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, questions, thoughts, concerns?
You can take it. You're closer. I'm busy. What's your next?
A comment and a question. A comment is when you were moving the sounds around, it kind of felt like you were a spatial conductor, which was very cool and interesting. But a question on that, is it all of the different sounds that you can move around the space, are you moving all of those around manually, or are any of them like programmed to move over the space over a given course of time, other than the things that are rotating?
No. Other than what's rotating, nothing is programmed for automatic movement. I do of the just like individual like channels 1 through 7 over here. I'm just like moving these manually.
Okay, so like 2 of them can't be moved at the same time, right?
Not in this configuration.
Cool.
No. Oh,
But you could.
but you could.
Yes. Yeah. Good question.
That was my question, that's all.
Hey, good to see you again. Good to see you both.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that. I came in a little bit later. So the configuration you had set up, was that like for a VST plugin, or is that a specific environment? Does it interface with Ableton at all?
I did not program this interface with Ableton at all. What it is doing is that it is I'm just like playing from like 37 different WAV files that I have loaded into. That's not what I wanted to hit.
What program is this?
This is Max MSP.
Max MSP.
It is a visual programming language for manipulation of sound.
Oh, gotcha.
So what I have is I have
So
SF.
this is just Max for Live.
Max for Live is Max in Live. This is just
I see.
Yeah.
Hence the name.
Yeah.
Yep. I actually haven't used Max for Live ever before. I have Ableton Live, but I just like never updated my license in order to get the Max for Live version. Anyway, I digress. Literally all I'm doing is I'm just like playing like 37 different audio files that are loaded into like various SF play objects across the entire project. I just lost my train of thought.
One little follow-up question, is there any reason these 2 are bolted to the ceiling as opposed to the others which are hanging?
I can answer that question. It's because of the projector that's here. It kept on being in the image of the projector, and we kept on having to go up on a ladder and take them down every time somebody wanted to use the projector. But people use the projector all the time, so they're on a ladder all the time. And then we were afraid we were going to drop the speakers, and one day we dropped one of the speakers, and it didn't break, but we were afraid. And then I said, there's a solution to this problem. We can just make the speakers go higher, and so that's what happened. Yeah, it was the most elegant compromise we could come up with. So, hi.
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller. So when you're thinking of spatialized audio, and you kind of alluded to having a kind of a map in your own head of where action or inaction may take place, when you're thinking about that movement in this space, how do you find it like translating that to the audience, or do you even think that the audience needs to know when you have a space set up for yourself?
Great question, new caller. So let me just kind of repeat that back. Your question is, the internal world that I'm creating, is that something I want to make external to the audience, or is it something that I keep internally? Is that kind of like the internal spacing, and when I was talking kind of about like the pentagrams and the duality and stuff? Yes and no. Everything that's happening, much like with real life, inside myself and my ideas of these lines or these duality, it's the reality of that for me will always be the most robust because that's my perspective. But then with trying to influence or express that to the audience, it's basically just how much I want to share. So for this piece, I definitely I started the piece by setting up a specific space and encouraging audience members to move around the space. So I brought them into the world and I showed them with prop work as well, and lack of body and space. I showed them certain points that kind of divided these cardinal directions up and let people experience that for themselves. And then when I'm moving and when I'm performing, I'm very intentional about direction. So hoping as much of my internal world that I've created can translate, but knowing that it's mainly for myself and what can be expressed and what comes through simply is up to the viewers. And it also excites me what people may take from what I'm doing without explicitly being, I'm walking over here because I'm thinking about death. So, yeah. Okay. Great question, though. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, guys. This is maybe, if it's a two-part question, it's only because there's two of you. And you both said such interesting things. But on the topic of making sound for this idiom, this is, a recorded product that Dee, you were mixing down and sculpting to release, for regular audio, right, in stereo. And when you were talking about, exploding this out into the 16-channel CLEAT system, I think you used the term, you got overwhelmed with that kind of. Does that feel like a rewrite? Could you just talk a little bit more about what that felt like?
Yes. Well, already working with that much like recorded product you have to make any piece of art at a certain point you feel obsessive and almost a little like manic because you're working over these certain parts, especially for something that's recorded and released or produced and can be experienced by other people and manipulated or replicated. You're going over these parts over and over again, and especially when I'm getting such small pieces of audio, just like that, like a whoosh, moving it over a centimeter or whatever in the DAW, it starts to get really, really obsessive, and I honestly just didn't want to be looking at a screen for umpteen more hours than I had already been doing. So it got really obsessive because I would have been taking all of these parts and now bringing in a third dimension. So instead of simply squaring something, I'm now cubing something, and so the amount of work multiplies in a similar way. So that's why I was getting overwhelmed. Hearing it, however, there was definitely a moment when I was into that process and had about like 3 minutes of audio that was all like da-da-da-da, and it was actually the violin part. I had it go like do all over, and there was not a very clean way to do that in GarageBand. Shout out to my band heads out there who are working in that DAW, but it was amazing to hear because it was an insane amount of, or for a better term, like just in overwhelming in a positive way, like overcoming amount of control, because I could really just place everything so meticulously. However, I wanted to let go of the piece. And so it was time to let go, and I felt that. So if I wanted to spend another year on it, I would have done that. Maybe for something else, but yeah. No question.
Is it all right if I ask the second part of this, which is, Dante, you illuminated something really interesting to me, which is you're talking about the voice of God effect and beaming something down targeted through all 16 channels of audio. Or like the analog to that in stereo is putting something at center. And that's like the most neutral thing you could do, right? It's like you just take that for granted. So I guess once you're back in the space, in the spatialized sound, is there no neutral effect? Like you can't go to center because it feels like a deliberate choice. Is there anything else you discovered like that you couldn't rely on from your like stereo experience, either of you?
That's a good question. I guess the equivalent in stereo is just putting something at the center completely neutral. But I suppose that like in that like using that same idiom, then like panning things to the left predominantly or panning things to the right predominantly is a subtractive process by comparison, where it does feel as though like the neutral is just like having each of these sounds at the different location. And I did find something that was a little bit like that. At one point there is a at one point this is the audio file is called Rock Bottom Fuck About. Pardon my French. And there is a part that it goes in that the audio starts over there and it's just like that one it's just on that one speaker and then it moves to the center and then I increase the radius and it blooms outward, and the effect that you see from that, the overwhelm I think comes from that it is a new type of it is a new dimension of dynamic where we're here. You can have these both at like -11 decibels in the mix, but if you have them playing out of so many channels at once, it is just like de facto louder.
Yeah, I was gonna add on that.
Yeah, my idea of the true neutral is when every speaker is playing something at a pretty like middle level, in the same way that putting something in center or just like having absolutely in mono, I guess, having no stereo. You're just there. You're in it. You're not in the depth, but it's right there. I don't know how else to say that. Yeah, it's true. Any other questions or thoughts too? Yeah, back in here.
Yeah, I have a Max question. I'm interested in the conceptualization of the cone. So is there like gradients built into that, like, or is it just kind of anything that's encompassed by that circular projection is the same volume?
The idea that it is that there are gradients is why I used the analogy of the cone. Yes. Yeah. In that specifically okay, comparatively if it's here then the point is there and it is at the loudest over there, but if I have it expanding outwards, actually let me just show you this in practice. So right now, this is at the lowest slope. So you hear it only coming out of there. However, if I were to, and this is a problem with my code, it only changes gradients if I hit slope and then I just wiggle it around a little bit. As you can hear, now that it's at a higher slope, it is coming out of that the loudest, but it is coming out of that speaker, and that speaker at quieter amounts. And there's a visual representation of it in the bottom corner. And then eventually, you can get to there, where now there's a little bit of it coming out of every single speaker. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I'm trying to kind of conceptualize the idea of the circular array or the circular projection with the cone. So you have y-intercept too, so that's raising the vertex of the cone versus the slope.
Oh yes, yeah, that is what that does. Yeah.
So how does that interact with so if you have a higher vertex and a smaller slope, having the same projection as a lower vertex and a wider slope?
Yeah, I think that the y-intercept, I think that it is, it's literally just raising up the vertex the higher the y-intercept goes. Honestly, I kind of implemented that and completely forgot about it. I had no point in have do I ever use it.
Yeah, because it would be interesting to bake in time delay, sound delay as in wave propagation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well.
Yeah.
There you go. That's yours. That's yours for free, my friend.
And then
catch that next year.
And I believe that the woman in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles jacket is next.
Hi. So I'm new to the area. I have some experience in improvisation, and I've always been curious about these type of installations. And not only curious, I would love to. As I find time, be able to experiment. But I don't know. There's so many like thoughts, ideas. I don't know exactly where to start. By the way, he's also very. I just met him. He's a neighbor of yours from the first. He helped me with parking, and so he's very brave because he doesn't belong to the world that we know, and so he has also ideas and
I'm sorry, I understand a little English and communication, the difficulty to say pronounce it. I work in the kitchen, understand everything conversation today.
Nice.
And that's important. This is in focus.
Sí.
That's porque one guys, two guys, three guys, five guys, 17. Understand.
Yeah.
I like it. There's a lot of conversation. The information is very nice. There's a school. There's only 1 year in the high school.
Yeah.
This to understand. But there's everything is nice in the world. I understand everything in conversation. There's I'm putting on the 5 or 6 guys in friend and totally for me.
Muchas gracias para bien aquí. Yo hablo un poquito de español, pero sí, es una
es una base diferente a lo que habla uno en México.
Okay, yeah.
Me dificulta un poquito hablar un poquito despacio.
Sí.
Que es muy diferente.
Sí.
El idioma que ustedes hablan en español.
Sí, okay.
Nosotros. Pero me gusta, la conocí hoy en la noche y me gustó. Estoy tomando, ya tuve 2 intervenciones con ustedes. Les gustó lo que yo dije y todo.
Sí.
Porque sé lo que yo trabajo en la cocina y ahí es base lo que yo estoy trabajando y lo que ustedes están explicando y dialogando es un audio que nosotros tenemos auditivamente que muchos no lo entienden.
Right, okay.
Entonces, es una definición en el punto de medio que es en el 120.
Ajá.
Sí. El punto a dónde? Aquí.
Ese es el punto que muchas personas no ven.
Sí, sí. Yeah. It's a point that many people can hear. Yeah.
A word that he was mentioning like several times was like recopilation. I don't know exactly, but I think exactly what you meant. But I think all these things that happens with sound,
yes,
that the memory or the you go to a concert and then they're giving a concert
and
in the front, but you hear it from the sides, and then what happens psychologically to you as an audience. Right?
Exactamente, es una cabeza. Aquí. Yeah.
Like a brain.
Una cabeza es todo el mundo, somos nosotros.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
El mundo es muy diferente.
Yeah. Exactamente. Yeah.
El mundo no comprende que somos una sola persona.
Yeah. Es los personas. Tú me digas que los personas en medio es una diferente de mundo de los personas allá o el otro lado. Okay. Yes. Es muchas cosas. Especial.
I wanted to ask just because sometimes this is was it an improvisation mostly, and then also you designed according to what you knew you had here in this space, so it was particular to this space. It's not something that you can move around or
So that actually is a good it's a good bridge into the second half of this conversation. So I'll answer that in 2 parts. This piece actually exists to be listened to on the headphones. That's where I started, was simply something that people like, a song. I like to call it my single, right? Right? So, which is an hour and a half long, but simply to be listened by oneself. But when I learned that this system existed and also is open for anyone to use, anyone who wants to ask, hey, may I use this system? May I try? You can reach out to Stefan or Sam or other people. I knew that I had to bring it into something even deeper, because just the headphones, I wanted to almost make you tiny and go into the headphones and go into the wires and live in the song. So that was my idea. Yeah, exactly. So like a tiny mouse inside my brain. And then a lot of the audio I recorded was improvised, but here's the bridge. The part that I'm going to encourage from other people, we're going to take a very quick break and then use our time to improvise with the system as a group or as individuals, and use something that Dante created so we can all plug in our voices or instruments and improvise on the system and improvise the movement of it. So when it was all done as a piece and performed, some of the movement was improvised, and Dante's movement as a curator of the sound was improvised at some aspects, but mostly that was like very thought out. But now is the time for it not to be thought out and improvised. So I'm gonna give us like 5 minutes to go to the bathroom. Thank you for your question. Also, we can keep talking if we don't want to improvise and we're all tired and have a big day tomorrow. And I don't know if that. I feel like improvising energizes me, but.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, mucho gusto. Thank you for thank you for coming. And si tú quiero tocar el piano or guitar or canto con nosotros, se puede. Okay, so yeah, let's do it. Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, so take 5 minutes, get a drink of water, do what you gotta do, and then we're gonna come back and try and plug people into the system. Yeah, and if, of course, if you want to leave, you can go. I'm not holding you here, but yes.
All right, so I love this idea. Well, we're totally going to do this, but I'm not going to let you get up and leave and start doing things without giving a round of applause once again. Okay, 5 minutes, and then let the wild rumpus begin.
Yeah.